Happy Pride Month. With the recent resurgence of 1820 in regards to the attitude toward the LGBTQ plus community, I thought you guys could use a hand in fighting the good fight. A big hand. Or tentacle, rather. In my thorough research consisting of trusting blindly the first stranger on the internet I could get my greasy little hands on, I discovered Nakika, an icon of transgenderism. Able to change hair, gender at will, they represent the paragon of creation. And who better to smack some big-ot heads than a big-octopus? To lay out a plan of action, I sketched myself my very own Nakika using this Godzilla comic panel as reference, differing quite a bit from it due to personal taste, but still including some key aspects of it, namely the color scheme, which, if you had any doubts about Nakika as transgender, is a rock-hard argument against your skepticism. The squid apparatuses on the ends of its protuberances, as well as the rock someone must have thrown at its head real hard. Additionally, I drew some heavy inspiration from this artist's rendition, which regrettably is far superior to mine. Once the sketch was done, I began constructing an armature. I needed the tentacle it would balance on to be as strong as possible, so cleverly, I bought some flimsy wire and spent 30 minutes twisting it together using the trusty and well-trodden method of tying it around a plastic mic stand and slamming the other end into a drawer and then turning it until my bicep evaporated. I scrunched up a sheet of aluminium until it was just small enough to not fit the drawing so I could demonstrate the harder and worse technique of model making, where you connect them using copious amounts of scotch tape, because I didn't have any bourbon. Then I matched the wire to my blueprint until the tentacle looked like tentacles, and made 9 more -3 because if you actually rearrange the letters in Nakika, it actually spells 7 tentacles. It's true. These also got twisted and prodded into place, capturing the process on a healthy 2 frames per second thanks to my incompetence with technology. Following that, I swiftly became furious at the table and slammed it so hard the armature gained a coat of green stuff. Setting that aside to indurate, I began working on Na's head, continuing the trend of 1 frame every full moon so I could create the most convincing transition on Earth. Sensational. Using my refined method of smoothing and shaping, I created a cylindrical oval in the shape of a cylindrical oval head. Sadly, the head wasn't slaying enough, so I added some cheekbones to it to make it slay, because it wasn't slaying enough. Producing my set of torture implements, I mushed and stabbed it until it revealed to me who it was working for, while also sketching the features of the head. I then added some smaller details way too early in the process, such as the mandibles, in hopes of smushing it completely with my big fat fingers and having to redo it. Comparing it to the drawing, I realized it was perfectly sized, provided I was willing to make the body about 40% larger to match. I wasn't, and tore the entire thing asunder. Now at this point, it should be evident that I was neither prepared, nor did I have the skills to make up for it. The clay I was using, which while being a good clay was very inappropriate for the circumstance I had circumstanced upon it. Being monster clay, I could neither bake nor harden it. In the German summer, it was also suffering from being very gloopy. Excuse me. Where was I? I don't remember. This made it difficult to work with and is my extremely valid excuse as to why it turned out unideal. I also did not have the colors I required and ended up blending Posca pens with the ones I had, securing my descent into super hell once I expire. The things I did manage to prepare was the flimsiest wire on planet Earth as well as the green stuff, which actually worked perfectly for my needs. In the meantime, I worked on the head, pinching and pulling this way and that to create a homuncular approximation of the one that I had drawn. Then, using my tiny long spoon, I pressed on the soft spot on its head, killing it instantly. Fitting this to the body, I realized I had simply repeated my earlier mistake of making it too big and tore it apart in a fit of rage. Thankfully, this was all a dream, and actually I had made it the right size from the start, and forgot to record the part where I added the winged membranes that might be its ears? This time around, I was more methodical and careful with the head, making small adjustments with my tools rather than, as I am predisposed to, ham-fisting it completely. And then I did that some more. I then added some random indents and grooves to make it seem intentionally lumpy, as I had no isopropyl alcohol to smooth it with, nor could I bake it and sand it. You just gotta make do with what you got. Gandhi said that. In the meantime, here's some puns about the mandible while I refine the one of Nakika, courtesy of Jessica Andrews.
What do you call a jaw that tells tall tales?
A jawbreaker of a liar.
I tried to write a song about my jaw, but it just wasn't very catchy. It lacked ellipses.
Bite.
Why did the dentist bring a map to the appointment?
He heard your jaw was in a different place.
I'm reading a book about jaws. It's quite riveting. I can't put it down.
It's a real jaw dropper.
I can't say I'm too tickled by them, but I appreciate the sheer quantity she can produce. Thank you, Jessica Andrews. Everyone thank Jessica Andrews right now. How's my hair look? Pretty fucking stupid. Reattaching the wing ears reminded me of the bigger wing ears I had hitherto neglected. This had to be remedied post-haste, and I began by flattening a ball of clay and then pressing a series of wires into it for structure, then cutting the wing shape around it. This, of course, was a stupid idea that could never work, as I discovered when I tried to peel it off the table and it immediately fell apart. In lieu of this, I opted for the secret method the monks taught me, which unfortunately I could not show on camera because I took an oath, and that's why there's no footage of me making it. Not because I forgot. Once I had my base wing ear, I started to define the wing fingers. This had nothing to do with monks of any sort, and so I'm fine to show that on camera. I firstly added a length of clay along the wire to cover it up, which I then blended into the membranous tissue spanning the wingers. Once it was sort of blended, I then unblended it, separating the thing from the wing, but on my terms. Repeat 3 times, then bend to make it look like it obeys gravity, cut the wires, and set aside to dry. Now do it again in hyperspeed. Like this. Throughout the video, the model has had a major problem. It couldn't stand up. I wasn't gonna take this lying down, so I laid down the groundwork for a stand for the tentacle to lean on so it could stand. Yeah. This very complex maneuver was navigated through scrunching up a ball of aluminium and jamming it into the twisty tentacle and then covering that with clay. I redefined the tentacles that wrapped around the big rock using a clay shaping tool and then made sure the model could stand up now by pushing the clay on the edges down as well as adding some clay to the base tentacle and then praying to God. On the topic of tentacle clay, I decided not to add any clay to the arm of the tentacles for 3 very important reasons.
1.
The wires holding them up were gimcrack at best and susceptible to bending or toppling.
2.
I needed them to be thinner so they could look more eldritch, as well as making the body look larger and more bigger.
3.
I was leaving for a flight to a different country in 6 hours.
3 Part 2.
I was too lazy. Once the squid hand was sufficiently squiddy, I blended it into the arm. I then repeated this step for each of the tentacles until it could play the clarinet and berate sponges. At this point, it was time to attach the head. I sort of estimated where it should go and then used the tool everyone uses to drill holes in stuff. My compass circle tool. Duh. Now that the hole was ready to receive the... I widened the hole, and once it was big enough for my liking, I inserted the I inserted the head by way of a broken toothpick and too much superglue, which I spent the next few days peeling off my hands until it was snug as a bug in a rug. Now I know I know. You've been sitting here with bated breath for me to add the chitinous lobster-esque armor for the tail, and... Why? It's already done. You're a weirdo. The attachment points were looking a little flimsy, so Nakika hit the gym. Firstly added were the pectoral muscles, because I felt like it. I left a little of the sternum peeking through because of reasons, and then moved on to the deltoids, or shoulders, for those who use normal words. You know who you are. The entire enmuscling process followed pretty much the same steps of adding lump and then blending it out. And for some of them, adding lines to make it look legit. Whatever. Then, to make sure they can at a moment's notice scoot out of harm's way, I added the tail flap. I then blended... something? Oh, the belly wrinkles. Yeah, I blended those into the green stuff undercoat to make it a less jarring transition from clay to resin. After my camera briefly had an astigmatism, I moved on to the refined and delicate process of texturing. Once the rock looked like a rock, I began to lay down the top coat, using these colors that I forgot the names of. They're Warhammer paints, I think. On the topic of colors, a vexillology lesson for you. The colors in the transgender flag are representative of the traditional color for baby boys, light blue, the same for baby girls, light pink, and white for those who are intersex, currently transitioning, or consider themselves to have a neutral/undefined gender. Now ain't that a thing? Interestingly, the most common combination of colors on a flag is red, white, and blue, which is just an unpassable version of the trans flag. The most uncommon combination is anything with purple. At this stage of the painting, I was really just throwing colors around until I had something to work off of, mostly referring back to my reference for where to haphazardly splotch it on. I know you at home may be thinking to yourself that the colors on this creature might be quite strange. What kind of protection is light blue and pink gonna give you? But I wouldn't say it's that far-fetched. Firstly, the colors may be indicating that Nakika is poisonous, or venomous, to ward off predators. Not that there are many predators for the titan with the longest body length of all known titans in the monsterverse, beating out the piddly 846 Tiamat by 51 feet, an 898 feet, 273.7 meter long hyper-intelligent octopus. That's roughly the height of New Jersey's tallest skyscraper, 2 pyramids of Giza, 3 Statues of Liberty, or 4 Boeing 747 stacked wing to wing. Just in case you were wondering. Anyway, I did a lot of stuff with color while I was talking about color in a different context, such as wet blending the paints on the tentacle to give it a nice gradient, painting the inside of their muscular hydrostats blue, and then adding some red to the base of the tentacles because I wanted to. And then wet blending that too. There's not really much to say about the painting, other than I cleaned up some edges and stuff. I'm not good at painting. Long story short, I finished doing the base colors for everything and then moved on to the fun bits. First, a wash of brown wash to give the colors a unifying tone and bringing it all together, as well as seeping into the cracks and making the details stand out. And then again, my lack of planning or gathering of the correct resources bit me in the ass. Ouch. My ass. As it was monster clay, the paint didn't really stick very well to it. So the age-old method of putting wash and then wiping off most of it led me to also wiping the paint off. Shit. We live and we learn. Instead, I settled for just having the wash sit there, overpoweringly brown on all the colors and hoping the dry brushing will save us all, which I moved on to now. Essentially, dry brushing is just putting paint on the brush and then using a piece of toilet paper to wipe most of the paint off and then use the dregs that hung onto the bristles to give a dusting of color to the most raised area of the area. Leaving the cracks dark with the more exposed clay to pop out. I began with a light blue, then a lighter blue, and then so on to a near white for the very raisedest areas. Then I dusted some edges with a white and then moved on to the glamour shots. Just kidding, I forgot to do some stuff. I recorded this part on my phone, because pretty much everything else was at this point in my suitcase and ready by the door for the flight. I took a brown stick of pastel that I chopped up using my nail file and applied it to the areas around the bottom of the sculpture to look like sand and dirt. I also applied it underneath Nakika's lobster-esque tail, not because they shit themselves, but because I imagined they would make some dirt float up when they scoot around. At this point, if I was a better YouTuber than I am, I would spend the next 3 days fucking around with resin pores and such like, but unfortunately, I'm not. So instead, I threw on some gloss varnish that I just, had, I guess, and then moved on to the glamour shots for real this time.
Yes! Go forth now, my beautiful creation! Go forth and lay waste to various unspecified, unnamed American presidents pushing an anti-LGBTQ plus agenda.
Hey, so, watched the video, did you? Great. Cool. I made it, you know? Weird. Yeah, it's a coincidence, really. You know, you watched it, I made it. Wild. So, did you like it? If you did, you could like it. You know, the video, you could press the like button. Great. Well, you know, I'm going this way. So, yeah, different way. Well, great. Okay. Cool. Catch you in the next one. Love you. Bye-bye now. I'm gonna go. No, you hang up. Okay, bye.